This is Super Mario Bros., the 1985 platform game that changed video games forever. Now, I'm not going to give any kind of review of it or anything, although obviously I think it's pretty good, but I'm here to talk about its difficulty, what makes it easy, and what makes it hard. Super Mario Bros. Is what a few people call NES hard. Games like the original Mega Man series, Zelda 2, and obviously Super Mario Bros., all these games have a particular quality of difficulty that makes them different from difficult modern games like Super Meat Boy or Celeste. So in this video, I'm going to figure out what exactly makes them different and analyze their difficulty to see what we can learn in creating our own games. Now, let's talk about what NES Hard actually entails. For a lot of people, it's kind of an intangible quality that you can really tell in some games, but in others they clearly don't have it. I think NES Hard mostly comes from a mix of difficult platforming or puzzle challenges, and the inability to skip to a previous part of the level if you die, so maybe you have to go back to a significant portion of the game, or even restart the entire game if you lose. But contrast that with modern hard games, as we'll call them, games like the aforementioned Super Meat Boy or Celeste. In those games, if you die or lose, you only lose a small amount of progress, maybe go back a few seconds. But even though you don't lose that much progress, the brutally hard level design makes up for it. Of course, just like many things, these kinds of difficulties can be measured on a spectrum. Some games are closer to NES Hard, but not exactly, and some are definitely closer to modern hard, but still retain some elements of NES Hard. Like the retro mode in Crash 4, where instead of going back to a checkpoint when you lose, you have to restart the level. On the other hand, in Super Mario World, you have to go back to the save point you last saved at when you got a game over, so it sends you back a couple levels, but nothing too far. Now, there is one caveat to this: roguelikes, which are some of the most popular indie games these days, but are they NES hard or modern hard? I mean, every time you lose the game, you have to restart the whole thing, so they seem pretty NES hard, right? Well, I want to put forward that these games are actually modern hard, just in the way that they're designed. You see, these games aren't intended to be beat in one sitting, like Super Mario Bros., for example. In these games, the developers want you to die over and over again so you learn more about the world and the dangers inside it, so you have a more gradual progression, and eventually you can finish the game based on your own skill. And this gradual progression is very similar to what you see in modern hard games. And really, one run makes up a fairly insignificant portion of it. Okay, so that's the different types of difficulty, but what about Super Mario Bros? How could a game like that that's so old suddenly change with the press of a button? Well, let me first tell you a bit about how the Super Mario Bros. Title screen works. So every time you die in Super Mario Bros., you lose a life, and obviously if you lose all your lives, you get a game over, and you're booted back into the title screen. Now, this can seem pretty unforgiving, and I'd argue that, yeah, it kind of is. Luckily, the devs over at Nintendo were nice enough to include a secret cheat code. Well, not really a cheat code. You could just press the B button, and if you already cleared a world, you could go back to that world immediately instead of having to beat all the levels up to it. So for example, if you got through World 3, you press the B button twice before you press start to play, and you start on World 3 instead of World 1. But this isn't that useful by itself, unless you had the NES on the entire time you were playing the game. If you ever turned it off, you lost all your progress, including the world that you went up to. And being able to skip straight to World 8 every time you press B was kind of broken, so every time you turned the NES back off and on, you lost the ability to select your level until you went back and beat that world again. But that all changed when Nintendo released the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch last year. Luckily, I picked it up because it was, well, I like Mario and I like capitalism, and I thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch has plenty of neat little features and Easter eggs, but one of its overlooked features, I'd say, is the ability to save your progress, including what world you last died on. Sure, it sounds like just a quality of life feature, but actually it's really important to me, because if you press the B button, you can go back to any world that you've beaten at all. And for me at least, this fundamentally changed how the game played. Because you see, I like to cheat, you could say. I use save states whenever I'm playing games on an emulator, and I don't really feel bad about it, because I just feel that, making these old games a little bit easier isn't hurting anyone, so why not just have a little fun and make it a little easier on me? After all, I play games to de-stress, not to be more anxious. So since I like to cheat, I could just maybe give that B button a little tappy tap tap whenever I get a game over and just return to whatever world I was last playing. And this really does shake up the difference between NES hard and modern hard. Remember how I said that the hallmark characteristic of modern hard games was not losing much progress when you died? Well, now, whenever you get a game over, instead of losing the entire game, you go back a maximum of 4 levels. This may not seem like much of a difference, but now it definitely is. Super Mario Bros. For me turned from more of a sort of impossible, almost high score based game just to see how far you could get, into something more akin to a roguelike maybe, except without the randomly generated levels. Instead of hopelessly running towards the princess and seeing how far I could get before I inevitably died, I actually had a fighting chance of making it through the whole game. Whenever I beat a world, it's kind of like reaching a save point, and I was definitely happy whenever I did that. So you can definitely see how just the simple tap of a V button changed Super Mario Bros. From an NES hard game to a modern hard game, and I feel something like that is definitely a breath of fresh air for these old games. But what about new games? What can we learn from my experience with Super Mario Bros.? Well, one thing I learned was that old design doesn't necessarily make a bad game. Super Mario Bros. Has some pretty janky physics and some odd level design at parts, but now that design feels a lot more kind of charming now that I play it with a modern hard difficulty. Instead of being mad at the quirks of the game because they're setting me back, they're not really setting me back anymore, so I can just be interested in them and enjoy them. Now, I usually make all my games modern hard anyway, but now I know that if I need to make it NES hard, then I should probably find a way for the player to change that, so maybe something like this B button cheat would definitely help to make the player a bit less stressed and worried, and might breathe some new life into the game once the players finish playing it the NES hard way. Because in the end, games are meant to be fun. And so if a modern hard game is a lot more fun to one player and an NES hard game is more fun to another, then why not let them have the best of both worlds? And even if it's just something as simple as one button, that can make all the difference between two players who just want to have fun playing your game. But that's just my brain sprouting words through my face hole. If you liked it, then buy my game Wing It. I would say it's modern hard, so if you like those kind of games, then definitely check it out. It's available on Google Play for free or PC for $2, so just do what you want, and if you don't want to buy it, no pressure. But anyway, you have a good day. Don't hit any Goombas or fall in any lava pits, and hopefully I'll see you around.